Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Daryl, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have the consent agenda, the minutes from January 24th, 2019, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda is read.
One correction on line 79, Chairman Fontanella's name is spelled wrong.
What? Object.
Just add an A at the end.
Yes, it looks like it. Duly noted. I'm sorry.
It's a very common occurrence throughout my lifetime, so I don't even pay attention anymore.
You don't know how many times you've been Mike Fountain. Yeah, spell checks.
All right. Motion is made and amended. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the motion as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? None. We have two sections in the meeting for input from interested citizens. One here, one now, and one at the end of the meeting. Are there any interested citizens that have any business before the school committee? Seeing none. We don't have it on the agenda, but there is some recognition because apparently Steve Mark was walking down the hallway and saw a piano at the high school. Did some investigation.
So the high school was willed a baby grand piano by a local resident. It's a Yamaha C2, and because we estimate the value at more than school committee policy of $5,000, the school committee needs to vote to accept that piano.
Okay. I make a motion to accept as a gift a Yamaha Model C2 piano.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Great.
All right.
Hillary Bridge is happy.
Next time you're at the high school, stop and check it out. It's in the foyer in front of the auditorium.
Okay. Now we're going to presentations. We'll start with the student representative report.
Hello everyone. There's a lot of events this time. So at Sugar Lane on Wednesday, they partnered with several schools across Massachusetts in the Winter Walk and Roll to School Day. There were several families walking, riding, and going by scooter to school. They look forward to future events with Safe Routes to School program next year. Next Wednesday, February 13th, is the kindergarten registration from 1 to 4 and then 6 to 7:30. They look forward to seeing new kindergarten families next week. At the middle school had a volleyball night last Thursday. 13 teams competed, and there were a lot of people on a very cold night. They would like to thank all the teachers who came out to play and to Mr. Gillette for organizing it. The middle school had its second 6th grade kids night out last Friday. 90 students came and enjoyed the pizza, bouncy house, volleyball, basketball, board games, and hanging out with their friends. They would like to thank the PTA. The 6th grade completed a Model UN simulation last week. They would like to thank the LEF for their funding and the 6th grade team for planning and organizing. Tonight at the high school, we had the town-wide band concert from 5th to the high school. And the 7th and 8th grade dance is this Friday from 6 to 8, sponsored by Fable. The spelling bee for the middle school is also planned for next Friday. And next week, we have an early release day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we have a presentation on the seal of biliteracy.
Before Liz and Sue start, I just wanted to come up and introduce them. And for the Massachusetts State Seal of Biliteracy, which they're going to talk in great detail about, but I just wanted to recommend and request that we accept this and allow this to happen at our high school. It's a great opportunity for our students to show proficiency in multiple languages. And so I invite Liz and Sue up to talk more in detail about it.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us tonight. I'm Liz Kelly, and I am the World Languages Curriculum Coordinator. And this is Sue Pettingill, who is an ELE teacher throughout the district, but at 2 schools this year.
I'm at the high school and Sugar Lane this year.
Okay. And she is a huge driving force behind this, as well as many other teachers in the schools, especially in languages. So we're here to talk about the Seal of Biliteracy, which was established, as you can see in the Look Act, which creates benchmarks for attaining English proficiency for English learners. It also includes pre-K through K students in EL identification and programming, and it also adds additional data requirements. So those are some of the things this Look Act does. You might be familiar with it. The topic we're going to talk about, though, tonight is the Seal of Biliteracy. So, as some of you might remember from past presentations that I've given to school committee, Massachusetts has actually has been considering the Seal of Biliteracy for quite some time, and is actually one of the last states to enact the Seal of Biliteracy. This map just keeps changing because more and more states are getting on board. We have been following a pilot project, especially in the World Language Department, but talking to Sue as well, for the past couple years. There's a coalition of teachers called the Massachusetts Language Opportunity Coalition, who has been working on a pilot project where schools throughout the state have been offering the seal according to what they thought the law would be. The planning for this began actually way back in 2014, and then there was a work group established, and the first awards were given in the pilot in 2016. Last year was the third year of the pilot, and we really began following along. At that point, they have a whole toolkit. There was a Google group, monthly webcasts, email updates, etc. And this group is pretty vital in the seal coming to fruition in Massachusetts. As you can see, it's a coalition of a variety of groups. And they were actually, this coalition group was awarded the contract by the state to give them guidance about throughout the planning process. So we're hopeful that you would want to get on board with recognizing students in our schools. If we chose to offer this in our district, students would now be eligible this year with graduation this year, 2019, and we would be joining other forward-thinking districts. This is the first year that it's being offered, so we would like to partake. I do want to stress that this is a voluntary implementation throughout the state, so it is a decision for schools and districts to make, and it's also voluntary for students. So when I explain a little more, that'll make more sense. I know everybody has probably looked through all of this, so I don't want to read it to you, but we do believe that the purpose and the goals in the seal are pretty important. We are a field that doesn't get as much recognition as some of the other subjects, and so we think that learning languages and mastering languages is a 21st century skill, and we'd like to be able to sort of advocate for that in allowing this recognition to move forward. So, who is eligible? In our district, this would be world language students taking the world languages we offer at the high school, French, Latin, or Spanish. It would also be English language learners or students whose first language is not English. Specifically, this year we estimate that the number of students who would be eligible would be around 30. Part of the work, though, would lie in reaching out to students who are not currently enrolled in a high level of world language, and this would call for a collaboration between world language and ESL teachers, and as well as the technology department, who is the group that does the reporting that's required by the state. We would want to reach out personally to students, to invite them, especially to make sure they know they're eligible and what the benefits would be for receiving the seal. And this would be in addition to the formal communication that's actually required by the law. And I'll talk more about that later. So what the seal is technically called the State Seal of Biliteracy. There are two tiers of the seal. The first is the State Seal of Biliteracy, and the second, a higher level, is the State Seal of Biliteracy with distinction. I do want to say that part of our hesitation and nervousness is that the department has just finalized the guidance on this. I was actually...
Department of Education.
Yeah, Department of Education. And they refer to themselves throughout all of this as the department. So we've been kind of rushing to catch up with everything because there were, I guess, ideas that they thought were going to happen, and so people were kind of moving in that direction and following along, and then they finally released their guidance less than a month ago. So for the State Seal of Biliteracy, students recognize high school graduates who attain a high functional and academic level of proficiency in English and a foreign language, meaning that those students can function in those languages in authentic real-life situations. The language on the next two slides, I just want to make you aware, is coming directly from the department's guidance document. So when we're talking about MCAS scores, the cutoff scores, these are the ones for this year, but we are aware that the cutoff scores will differ when MCAS 2.0 is enacted, so I just wanted to clarify that. And of course, that is starting with this year's sophomores. The other thing that is on here is talking specific to MCAS is that the Language Opportunity Coalition, that group that I mentioned earlier that has run the pilot and offered the Department of Education guidance throughout this, has advised the access test be also offered as an alternate measure of proficiency. And in the draft guidance it was, so there's actually, I just wanted to bring that up, that there's still some debate about that.
Can I just make sure that people
Yes,
know that
thank you.
they do know. That the
Okay,
access,
okay.
that the access test is the test that we give all English language learners on an annual basis, so that for those English language learners, that could be proof of their proficiency, is what we're hoping will happen.
Yeah, so we're hoping that this will come back, because as of right now, the 10th grade MCAS is the only measure. Okay. So the foreign language criteria first is that students have to attain a score at intermediate high, which is from the ACT Full Proficiency Guidelines. I've also presented those in the past. And then there is also an option for a portfolio. This is in certain circumstances only, and we can talk about those later if you want. But it does put more onus on the student in order to work through that portfolio. The next slide, this slide, has the ACT Full Proficiency Guidelines. And so again, you can see intermediate, it's the green, intermediate high is actually quite high. Again, the coalition and many of the groups working on the SEAL legislation were hoping for intermediate mid. So it is rather high. This graphic, I just want to make sure you understand, applies to world language study. So this is for the world languages. But the proficiency being tested in English through MCAS is even higher, and it's more like the advanced or superior level if you look at what the benchmarks are. The second level, the State Seal of Biliteracy with Distinction, again, is an additional level of recognition with higher benchmarks in both English and the foreign language. So it's 260 on the MCAS as of right now, and advanced low on that pyramid. I showed you the ACT Full Proficiency. Okay, the language of the law is very specific, and the English, as we know, needs to be tested by MCAS, and the partner language needs to be tested by only a certain number of tests. The other thing is that the proficiency level is determined by the lowest domain or mode score. So if a student earned intermediate high in 3 of the 4 domains, so speaking, reading, I'll say speaking, reading, and listening, and didn't score at least intermediate high in writing, the student would not be eligible for the SEAL. Okay. I'm going to go back for a sec, sorry. The district can add additional requirements. Some have done that. We're not advising that at this time. And then again, if there is no test, because of course there are some languages that are not in the tests that have been approved, that's where the portfolio would come in. And this would involve an authority in the language from the community. I'm going to talk about the testing information on the next slide. So for us, the tests that would be applicable are the stamp test, the Apple, and then for Latin, there's only one test, it's the ALIRA. The AP is an option for a test, the advanced placement, which we already give, but there are a couple of issues with AP, and one is that it's actually not really a proficiency test. Secondly, the scores aren't released until July, which would be after, most of the time it's seniors taking AP, and so the scoring would come late, and they wouldn't be able to get the recognition until later. So it could happen, but that's the caveat about the AP. I will tell you that the STAMP and the ALERA have actually already been piloted at the high school. The STAMP was piloted last year as a test for us to use just for our own curriculum planning and assessment and sort of see where we were with proficiency. And the ALERA has been used in Latin, and STAMP has now been used in Spanish as well. So we have used them for our languages at the high school. The advice from the pilot program participants is that it's really good to pick a test and stick with it, because you want to be comparing the scores from year to year and seeing how your curriculum is doing and all of that. If we continued using STAMP, we would still probably need to use Apple to cover some of the languages, because between STAMP and Apple it's not all the same. There is not quite all overlap. One thing I should also note is that cost should not be a barrier to any student. Per the state, we are responsible for any students who are receiving free or reduced lunch or just otherwise cannot pay. And I should also mention just that there are a handful of other tests out there. I just put the ones that cover the most languages on here, but there are other tests that cover Greek, Bulgarian, and American Sign Language. All right, so from an ESL perspective, this is potentially a fabulous opportunity to recognize the language strengths of ELs, and once established could really lift up this cohort of students whose knowledge and skills often go unacknowledged. We also believe that the seal would honor multiple languages and cultures in our community. So getting to the awards. Again, per the state, the newest laws and regulations state that the department, their job is to develop an insignia to be affixed to the diploma or transcript of a student who's been awarded the state seal of biliteracy, and then make the insignia available to school districts in an electronic format for the preparations of diplomas. For us, that means that we would need to either put a seal on the diploma or the transcript, or both. But it is up to the district to determine how to recognize their students within those parameters. In addition, during the pilot, many schools acknowledged achievement on a student's transcript, not on a diploma necessarily at that point, because it was still the pilot, but also did things like purchase a different color cord, similar to those being acknowledged as an honor student, and then these students would wear this at their high school graduation ceremonies, medals, pins, extra award ceremonies, that kind of thing are all options as well. So if we'd like to do this, to start, we have to basically do two things. We have to notify the state via email that we'd like to participate, give our notice of intent to participate. And we also need to notify parents and legal guardians of all students enrolled in the district, and sort of explain to them what this opportunity is, that their students, even in kindergarten down the road, would have this chance later on. And then low-income students, again, need to have access to any of the assessments required to cover the cost of these assessments, the assessments necessary to qualify for the seal of biliteracy. MCAS would not be an issue there, since it's already funded. This shouldn't be a huge cost, I don't think, for the district, but would obviously be part of future budget planning upon approval. So, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them.
Just one. I was just wondering, you mentioned about the timing of the AP test. The other tests, would the results be back in time to put it for like college applications?
Could be. So yeah, so could be. So part of the pilot, part of the reason we followed the pilot where questions like this came up, and schools are still, there's an email group, and we get a couple emails every day of people talking stuff out, and one of the things is it's up to us to decide when we want to test. There is kind of a sweet spot that is, we need to find what that is, because students are not necessarily, if we test too early, then they might not meet the bar. And if we test too late, right, then they can't, what do they use it for? So much of the debate has been that it really is a lot of schools have come up with the idea that it's a graduation type thing, and that if somebody thought they might want to try it, say their late junior year or early senior year, they could, but we also don't want to be over-testing kids, because at this point, like I said in the pilot, we've offered kids this opportunity. They've paid for it out of their pocket. It was an optional kind of thing to do. And so there's the money aspect, there's the time out of class aspect, there's the, proctoring aspect. So we have to kind of talk about that. But it certainly is an option. Some students might be identified as being more likely to reach that level of proficiency earlier. And so we might invite them to take it earlier, or might just let kids know that they have the opportunity. So we're open to that for sure.
If they wanted to, are these tests available to them outside of the school?
No. So what we have to do is we have to sort of set up an account with the company and then administer it at the school. The good thing about these tests, one of the great things is the results come back. So the Latin test, because it's just a reading test, the results came back as students. I was seeing the results as students were finishing up. I mean, they finished and they were instantaneous results, which was kind of exciting and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Did you practice your poker face on that?
Oh God, I did. I held out until everybody was done, and then it was actually very exciting. But then the Spanish and French results have been very swift. So what happens is the listening and the reading come back immediately, because those are computer. They're all computer adaptive tests too, which is very interesting and neat. So it kind of moves them up and down, the questions, as they do well or don't do well. And so that those results come back very quickly, and then the other results come back within a week or two. And
Speaking and writing.
the speaking and the writing,
graded
yeah.
by humans.
Right, but they come back very quickly. So it is a very fast turnaround, but they do need to be done and administered in school. The other thing that we're running into is just the time. Again, the Latin test is one class, pretty much, one class period, because it's just the reading. The other ones have been taking a little longer. And other schools we've spoken to have discussed that issue as well. So testing them more than once a year is a lot of time, too. Besides the money, it's time. And so that's something we might want to consider down the road, is testing at various intervals, sophomore year and senior year, or, just, again, because it is a valid assessment of our instructional practice and students' growth and proficiency anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a great program, and thinking particularly about our ELs, right? Especially if they've been here for a long time, they could easily meet that proficiency probably earlier than a senior year, and that would look good on the college transcript.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's also reason for them to really develop literacy skills in their native language.
Yeah.
Right? So some of these kids, they're speaking the language all the time at home, but they've never really bothered to learn to read and write in their first language, right? And so if I can communicate at to the parents at the Shaker Lane age, and these are kids who may very well really develop their literacy skills and go into adulthood with well-developed language. And
It's a nice goal for kids to have. It really is. I think it's a great opportunity.
No. Sounds like a good program.
Typically, what level of a course would students need to complete to be considered proficient?
So it varies greatly. And so that's been a lot of the, before we started testing it all, we have been at conferences, the world language teachers and I have been at conferences and talking to other teachers, and the big warning coming from everyone is proficiency is different than the AP tests. And so don't be surprised if your student who gets a 5 on the AP doesn't reach that intermediate high, because it is different skills that are being tested. So it's really hard to say, but it's upper level. It's 4, 5 for the, maybe someone down the road might be in 3, but at that point, we probably would have recognized them and maybe pushed them up on a little higher anyway. So I do believe it's a pretty high bar. Yeah.
So how many students would you predict would be eligible?
We've been talking about this, and it's very hard to say. I guess I actually know about mine because of the Latin. So I would have 2 right now, and and then I would have 1 more who came very close. So and the test that we use, Alira, actually comes out with another version in March. And if the student wanted, and since it's only 1 class period, I would say to this student, if you want to test again, I would recommend that. So I would have 2 or 3. We don't have the results back yet from French or Spanish, but maybe around there, maybe more, maybe less. I'm guessing.
Oh, thank you.
Jim?
No, sounds great.
I do not have any questions. I would just like to say that we have heard about this in terms of the pilot. It's not unfamiliar to us. And it sounds like we should be appreciative as a school committee that you have piloted it, that you use the term that I wrote down, forward thinking, and putting the framework in place. And then obviously our English as a second language is an emerging population, and we've seen that over the last several years. So having this kind of program ready to go, I think for us as a high achieving school district, it's something we should consider. In terms of numbers, because we are small, it's 2 to 3 right now, which is 2 or 3% of the class. Probably you're talking across all of the foreign languages, maybe 6 or 7. It's probably under 10, at least now today.
Mm-hmm.
But as this becomes more de jour, I think that's a foreign language. We might see it becoming more of a culture where we can get it up over 10% and 12, 50%. And the thing that I think that I like hearing about it is the curriculum supports the ability for students to become proficient, but when we think about their ability to learn on their own, a self-motivated student will be able to become proficient, and a student who's only gone through the 3rd level but has decided that's what she wants to do is going to find there are plenty of ways to become proficient. And frankly, in some ways, if you're not self-motivated as a foreign language student, you're not going to be proficient no matter how much of the curriculum you go through, because you have to invest to commit to being that proficient, the same way you would commit as a ball player, an artist, or something else. If you're asking for another level of commitment that a typical student maybe wouldn't be interested in for perfectly fine reasons, but I like the idea that for that student, this opportunity is here, and I'm fully supportive of it. And I also would like to, one other comment I'd like to make, the cost aspect of it, we don't need a budget for that. It's so small now.
Correct.
But I would like to be able to know that if we thought that testing twice, however we wanted to do it, whether you test at the beginning of senior year and then again to give students the opportunity, we can make that work. And the cost of it, and we shouldn't say, well, we're asking them to test twice. I mean, the numbers we're looking at, $17, $20.
Minimal.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a consideration.
So this is just because I thought of it when you said something else earlier. Would we want to think about, because you said it could also be used in assessment relative to your teaching practices.
It really already is, yeah.
So my suggestion would be is would we want to consider at some point using one of those test cycles with one of these style tests as part of our standard evaluation process?
What do we do with the maps? Sure.
That way we can include as part of the offered services one test opportunity, and it integrates in with the curriculum evaluation and the other pieces there. It didn't sound like it was like MCAS where we do it and we don't get any true value out of it versus some of the other testing.
Yeah, it's kind of kicking us in the butt already to direct our instruction in this direction as well. So the tests are fantastic, really. So
And it might also help in terms of benchmarking the level 1 and level 2 classes to make sure that they're accelerating along at the right pace.
So I like the way you're thinking, and this was, I think, really in line with what the pilot group was thinking.
Yes.
So the pilot group had originally proposed that there be a pathway to biliteracy.
Right.
Right, and so that maybe you test at the 8th grade level,
Right.
students that have already been part of the world language program, and
And then
show
again at
that
10th,
they're
yep.
en route
Mhm.
to that, right, and honor
And honor
that
them.
growth,
Mhm.
which we really felt like
It
would be a great
It also
thing.
acclimates them to that particular test, so that
Yep.
when they're going for the gold, they're comfortable in
Yep.
terms of, I've been through this, I know how to pace myself, I understand to manage the time management and things like that.
And obviously, my proposal there does have a slight budget
Yeah.
impact there. But I mean, I just throw that out there for us to be considering in terms of how we want to tailor this program.
Yeah, Steve's not smiling as much as he was a minute ago.
Oh, we're doing the calculations in
Yeah, no,
our head.
like,
and-
but I'm just saying is if there's a way we could get extended value out of it in terms of also tailoring the rest of the curriculum, it
Yes.
might be worth.
That's exciting.
Pitch them a volume discount, ask for the volume discount.
Some other districts
work it
are
out,
doing that,
yeah.
and that's what the whole part about voluntary implementation, and that we can do more. The only thing I'll just say out loud is that we can't call, if we end up doing pathway awards, we can do that, and the coalition is sort of advising people how to do that. We can't call those things the seal of biliteracy, but we can talk about pathway awards, and they were talking about silver and gold and this kind of thing, so we could certainly work on that too.
So just so I'm sure that I understand what you're thinking, are you including middle school in this, as
So-
far as testing at this point, or no?
No. Right now, we are testing seniors in 4 and 5, inviting seniors who are in level 4 or 5 to test. And what we got back for students who are interested at this point were seniors in level 5, and all of the seniors in level 5 said yes. And then a few seniors in level 4 said they would like to test. And that was to see where we're at, what can we offer this year, and then we're definitely up for expanding. We want to include students who are English learners. We want the portfolio is going to be another project, but down the road, to make sure we can assess students in all languages that are interested. But it is a high bar. I mean, that's just one thing we have to communicate. It is a high bar right now. So. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so my proposal would then is that probably based on that at level 4 and 5, we include that as part of the core test and evaluation curriculum.
Sure.
And then consider whether there's earlier levels to help calibrate that in the future. So, just to clarify, because I wasn't clear about exactly which levels
Okay.
you were testing.
The one thing about the testing that I'll just reiterate is that the stamp right now is a lot of days of testing right now. And we don't know if that's because students aren't used to it yet, or if it's because we're giving it in classes day after day, and it would be better to do it all at once. But we are running into 5 days of testing, for a class, so 5 class days. So that's one thing we just want to consider about testing. Right, we don't want to over-test. That was our only thought as a department. Yeah.
It's just a suggestion, it's
Yes,
not,
yes,
it's
yes.
not ruling from the
I-
bench.
Okay, okay. I like your suggestion a lot, thank you.
How long is the test?
It is an untimed test.
Oh, okay.
So that is, we're trying to fine tune what it is that's taking them a while. But again, at our cross-district PD day in the fall, we were talking about this with Harvard and they were running into the same problem, and the people in the pilot, it's a similar issue that schools are discussing, is how many days the testing does take. Again, not for Latin, but for the French and Spanish and anything else that's on the stamp test or the Apple test. They're very similar. Thank you so much again.
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Seal of Biliteracy program.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you.
I see Andrew Riley come in.
You did.
All right, great. You were next on the agenda, Andrew. What do you got?
Well, good evening, members of the school committee. Thank you for letting me present today. So, before I get into what my project is, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about who I am. So my name's Andrew Riley. I'm a current senior at LHS, and I'm the last of 3 students in my family.
Big smiles in the back of the room.
Yeah,
Oh, smile, bittersweet.
College course.
And my hope right now is to be a landscape architect and major in that in college, and I have been accepted to colleges, so looking forward to that. So why am I here today? So I'm seeking approval from all of you for the design and construction of my senior project. I'm also here to answer any questions or ease any concerns regarding the project and gather useful advice for this presentation, as this is what I will be doing in my career. So what exactly is the project? So this is an area right now at the top of LHS, and it sits right where parents drop off their students each day. And I noticed last year that this seems to be a largely underutilized area. There's some nice trees, there's a great bench that one of the classes donated, and we have the flagpole there. But I noticed it's a lot of grass. And so this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to create this overhanging pergola sitting on top of a flagstone base with a small half wall on the back side. It's about 12 feet deep by 15 feet wide, and it would create a great area for kids to sit outside and do homework, or for classes to be outside and do their classwork. This is the front view if you were standing on the edge of the curb facing towards New Estate. And this is from the back side facing towards the school. So what exactly do I want to do? I want to create a large, open concept, multifunction area. This can be used for any recreational use, whether it's taking photos for teams, or taking photos for prom, or having different class meetings, or having class discussions. I also want to create an architecturally interesting area on the campus, and I think that we can really use some of the space that we are blessed with having in a more effective way, and really use the area we've been granted. So what are the benefits? For me, it's a great opportunity for my college education and my future career. Being able to go to meetings like this and really interact with people that I will be interacting with in the future is great. For the school, it maximizes the use of our outdoor area. And it also creates a beautiful area that sports teams and prom couples can use, and as well as I said before, classrooms. It can be a great outdoor classroom. And here's the important nitty-gritty information. The budget I'm hoping to keep under $10,000. None of this would come from the school. This would all be privately sourced. So I've been talking with the class officers, and we can expect about $2,000 from the class, from our fundraisers. And I'm hoping to get about $4,000 in single donations from parents or groups of people that would like to donate. And I'm hoping to get about $6,000 from businesses that I've contacted in the area, whether that's in discounts or in monetary donations. And I'm actually planning on having a $2,000 overhead, whether that's for unforeseen expenses or whether that's just for maintenance and upkeep in the future. People that I've been working with so far are Acton Toyota of Littleton, Cataldo Nurseries, and Littleton/Concord Lumber. And so these are some questions that I commonly get asked. Who would build it? I'm currently looking for contractors that would like to build the pergola structure, as that is a overhead structure and needs to be built to code. And then the rest of the work, whether it's the flagstone or the half wall, can mostly be built by volunteer groups. I've had a lot of people come up to me and volunteer their time and their effort into building these different areas. When will it be done? I'm currently following a very aggressive timeline. I want to get it done by the end of this school year. However, it could end up being a legacy project that gets done throughout the summer. And why exactly do I want to build this? It's purely a motivation for me. Being something that I want to do in college, this is really driving me to be better in the field that I want to go into. This is not an Eagle Scout project. I often get asked that. It is purely a project of interest that I've been after for 1.5 years now. So that's why I'm here tonight, and I'd love to answer any questions if you have them.
Not right now, but yeah.
Daryl?
Anytime.
No, I really think this is a great idea in terms of, one, you coming forward and proposing it to the piece there. Of course, then I had a question. So flip back, I think one more of that one. So like, yeah,
Which one?
that's a good one there. So like this little half wall or round piece there, is that going to be wide enough for people to sit on? Because otherwise we need benches and other pieces there. Is that a sitting wall?
Yes, so it should be about 3 foot high so that people can sit on it and do work in their lap. And I'm also thinking about adding benches between those 2 side posts on either side so that you can have seating all around so that the teacher can be stood in the middle and present to
And
the
then
entire
the
class.
little circular thing in front of it, what's that?
So that's actually a bench that's already there. That bench was donated, I believe, by the class of 2013.
Okay.
It's a wooden bench that sits around one little tree, but I would like to add those pathways around it.
Okay. What do you think, like on the pergola, in terms of what kind of materials? Because I'm also thinking in terms of long-term maintenance and
Mhm.
other pieces there.
So I was thinking originally cedar. It's great with bugs and great, you don't really have to stain it. However, with price constraints and budget in the future, we could change the material or change the wood depending on budget and longevity. In terms of longevity, it can last 20, 25 years if it's, regularly maintained, whether that's staining or sealing the wood. And if that is a point that needs to change, we can always change the material to something synthetic that would last much longer.
I guess I'd just ask the committee if they'd want, if it, the choice between synthetic or regular or natural materials, is that something that we want to be informed of, or it doesn't matter?
Who do we think would be the point person for this if we move forward in terms of the administration? Would it be a Bill Maher or Steve Mark or John Harrington?
John Harrington's been the point person up till now.
It's a question,
I think-
because we might get questions later,
Right.
is it natural materials or man-made
Right.
materials?
I feel comfortable just saying that, we would like you, whoever, to evaluate, the opportunity, and if you think it's the right thing to do, go ahead and do it.
So we want concurrence through the
Yeah,
administration. on
Exactly.
the
I don't think we're
material
gonna
selection.
dictate the terms, but
Yep.
the direction would be to, make a good decision and weigh all factors, and cost constraints are certainly a reasonable
Yeah.
reason to decide A versus B, that's fine.
Would the synthetic material be double the cost as opposed to cedar? Or?
It would probably be about the same cost. It may even be a little bit less, depending on which material we went with.
Tricks or something.
There's aesthetic questions too, so.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
just want to make sure we have a
Right.
approval process
Yeah.
in place for it. And then, I guess this one here is maybe not as rosy of a question there, commitment to complete there. I guess, how committed are you, and, if it stretches out into the summer,
Yeah.
are you
I mean,
around to finish this project? Or?
By word of mouth, I'm very committed to this project, and I hope to move forward with this, and I hope for it to be our class gift, actually. I've been working with the student council for that, so that adds a layer of commitment because I really want this to be done before the next school year begins.
Thank you.
Erica?
Well, Daryl took most of my questions.
Yes.
But
It's
I was
not a
just-
competition.
I was just wondering about the plantings. Will you be doing those plantings too? And will there be anything like on the pergola itself, or is that?
We have thought about plants that would climb up
Yeah.
onto the pergola. We can definitely add those, whether it's at the time of construction or later on. But I will be adding plants around just to give it a better aesthetic.
Great.
Hopefully hardy plants.
Yeah.
Definitely perennials.
Littleton's got like a gardening club, or,
Multiple community groups. that I
you
think
might want to
we'll
just
see
reach
out.
out with one of the other, the other groups that do some of the plantings around town, just to maybe just coordinate also.
Both in terms of initially getting some help, but I think also in terms of being able to maintain it through time as you move on to greater and better.
Oh, he's gonna come back if we.
Okay, look back on this fondly, but look back.
Forward in terms of what you commit to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, no, I think it's a good point. I think there are other community groups that, once they realize something like this is going on, would love to help out and maintain it so that
May
we
have
get
planned
to enjoy it for
suggestions
the
and other
full.
things too.
I think your mom probably has a lot of contacts. But I believe the garden club would probably want to help you, so I'm part of it, yeah. So at the very least, you have me helping you.
Andrew, in terms of machinery and tools, how is that going to be handled? I would imagine you'll probably need a small bobcat to get in there and do a bit of work, and who's going to be monitoring that? Are they going to be trained, et cetera? And who's going to help you in terms of making sure that your sub-material is compacted properly, and on and on and on?
Mm-hmm. I definitely, if it's any work that needs to be up to code or to a certain standard, I will definitely get people who are licensed and know what they're doing to come and actually do the work. And I also will make every effort to not impede on school hours or any school functions to minimize the amount of noise that this project makes.
What about power tool use? How do you envision that happening? Would you be soliciting volunteers, for example? The only reason I'm asking is if we're going to use power nailers, they probably need to be trained on how to use them, and if they're using power saws.
Yeah. That again would be done by somebody who is licensed, knows what they're doing, and follows all the rules. The only thing that volunteers would be doing is anything that doesn't require power tools or any special requirements.
You know, those are good questions. And again, that's why I want to make sure that we have someone at the administrative level that we would expect to do, supervise any contractors we brought on to our campus. And that the expectation would be that as the project leader, you would be adhering to all of the requirements that we would put on anybody that we either paid or invited to do something like this. And as long as we're all on the same page with that, I'm sure we
I think
can work
Dr.
out the details.
Yeah, Dr. Harrington for basic questions, but anything that deals with commercial building, et cetera, would probably be Steve.
Right, definitely.
The best way to go.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it's got a name. The LHS School Pergola Project.
Good enough. Second, motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, and I told you it was going to be great. Thank you.
We're excited.
Very good presentation, thank you. You answered our questions. All right. Oh yeah, bad news, we said yes. All right, updated snow day cancellation pilot. Spring's just around the corner.
I know. That's all right. We're putting in the work for it. So I like how you said updated. So to start off, we'll talk about the FAQ, which we discussed 2 weeks ago. But a couple of things that were changed were the deadlines because of the arrangements that were made, or the agreement that was come to. Also, there's a new question, number 5, which kind of refers back to, Erica, what you were asking. So it's, are there specific requirements for the order of assignment completion? And so that's for 6 through 12, ensuring that students complete ELA and math on day 1, and then 6 through 9, science on day 2. And then the rest is completely by choice of the student. The rest, you can still see the central tenets throughout the rest of the documents still. So those were the only changes there. The other document that we are bringing to you this evening are the roles and responsibilities. And on that 2-page document, you can see at the beginning, again, we just have the introduction as to what the program, or the pilot, is all about. And then we break it down into the different job roles and the responsibilities for each of those roles. And so you can see in the teachers are required, we're asking them to create the assignments, to administer and help pass out the assignments to students, help with assignment completion, and then assess the assignment when the students are done. And then on the back side are the other roles that are throughout all of our schools and the different opportunities that those staff members have in order to complete the work that would be missed for that canceled school day. So those are the two documents, and I think those are our two final documents to bring up and discuss with regards to the snow day cancellation pilot. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them with regards to these documents.
I guess my one question is probably more to you, Kelly. So for, you know, things like the librarians and the related service providers and paraprofessionals and nurse and, you know, it has things that they should be working on, but is there a number of hours they're supposed to put in for each day, or is that
Right,
somewhere?
Yeah, we're keeping it the same number of hours that we would use for professional development during that
Okay.
day, so it's consistent across the district. So about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Good. Sarah?
That's-
No, I'm great.
Good, Jen?
Yeah, I guess I just don't understand how, like, if we don't know, maybe we have a year where we have 0 snow days, or maybe we only have 1, like, there's no way to predict how many extra days they should do, so is it like they, I don't know, I guess
So
I'm
how's
having
that?
trouble understanding how, like, the paraprofessionals and so on would,
Yeah.
I can handle that.
yeah.
Depending on what category we're talking about, if we
Right.
talk about ed assistants, in their contract, they have the opportunity to attend 2 professional development activities within our district a year. So if they attend more, it can be for 2 reasons. They want to, or they can use that time to make up for the time if we have snow days. And some of the staff will probably do more than 2. Others may do the 2 and then wait to have a snow day and then, you know, tag on some time. And it's going to give us an opportunity to work with our ed assistants and use some of our staff to deliver some in-service as well in areas that they've indicated that they would like to grow on. So I think it's a good opportunity for nurses and librarians. The work can be done after that.
Yeah,
They
so
don't have to.
there are enough opportunities enough to do this after the
Yeah.
deadline or
Exactly.
snow season is.
So a lot of our paras have, because there are the site-based, the school-based
Yeah.
professional development
And they
days,
fall,
and
yeah.
the 6 happen, they fall from January to
Right.
June. And so there is the opportunity for them to participate in those, or to come up with their own for those
Okay.
afternoons.
Great,
Yeah.
cool, thank you.
Our ed assistants, excuse me, every week get a video by a BCBA by the name of Polybath. So every week, I actually send the videos to them every Monday, and they're about a 10-minute video. And it focuses on growth mindset approaches to dealing with students and you know, how to deal with behavioral issues when they arise, and you know, just some additional training, traumatized students that have experienced trauma, what kinds of strategies can you use when you're dealing with the diversity of students that we have in our district. So we have plenty of examples that are opportunities for our ed assistants to make up that time.
All right, thank you. All right, moving along, we are at the second opportunity for input from interested citizens. Seeing none. Going to the subcommittee reports, PMBC.
Let's see, we met last night. I think one of the things that just bring to attention is we sent out the request for bids for the track for the pole vault. We did not receive any responses on that. We're following up with a couple of the companies to see if they will submit a bid for it. We're going to probably let that process play out over the next couple of weeks to see what's going to happen there. If we don't get any responses, we'll probably have to step back and reevaluate how we want to proceed with that project, such as maybe hiring a local contractor to do just the box install and maybe purchasing a portable mat, runway mat there, because so we're not ready to commit to that kind of approach yet, but we may need to step back because basically I think the project may be too small for the companies to mobilize for. But we'll know over the next few weeks. The other thing, I think at the finance joint meeting, the town has started to put together a overall capital budget that had prioritization or possible funded projects that both PMBC and I think the school committee needs to review that list there to make sure that the projects that are being funded are in the priority order that we're looking for there. So.
Did you want to do that tonight? Because we do have an electronic. Do we have electronic?
I could pull up the spreadsheet.
I wasn't prepared to because
Okay.
I didn't have a copy of the sheet.
Okay, that's fine.
But if you could send it to me because I don't have what was presented Tuesday night.
I can do that. I can do that. Just a comment about the PMBC allotment, so to speak. I noticed when I went through that sheet that the high school sidewalk reconstruction was taken off. And we're getting to the point with those sidewalks that they are becoming more and more of a concern. They're kind of disintegrating before our eyes. So I've been talking to the assistant town manager and asking him to revisit that. And he will be approaching the PMBC, but I would just like Daryl to realize that is a project that should be a high priority.
Yep.
And we don't have to do all of it at once. It could be split into two projects. Just, you go around the cafeteria area, around the front entrance, and then back along that back sidewalk and end at a point. And then year two would be to finish that sidewalk. So
Yeah.
I'd recommend that we reconsider that decision.
Tuesday night was the first time I saw that projects were selected and not selected independent of any local board or committee input. So that's why I said that they need to go back to the committees to make sure that those prioritizations are right there, because it needs to be done more interactively than just a list put up.
And the other thing I think we need to, given that we are the elected and appointed boards, I know that there is a finite amount of money, and that was a point that was made, trying to fit the projects that are available or on the list into what has been agreed upon as what is a supportable amount to spend on capital each year. There's certainly, that's part of the process, but it can't be the be-all and end-all. It can't be the start and the end. Because there are priorities and there are reasons why, one thing may need to get done. And if that means, taking two projects off to get one project in, and it doesn't come to the exact number, plus or minus, work it.
Right.
Work that process. And by virtue of being the elected and appointed boards, that's really our charge.
Yeah. And even
Direction from the town administration is certainly required, necessary to help us out, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would have preferred if we'd at least been told what the planned budget number was,
Right.
so that process could have been informed a little bit differently. Because even within some of the PMBC projects, there was discussion last night about not necessarily agreeing with the list that was presented.
So Daryl's on it, Kelly.
Good, thank you.
Well, no, but I also saw Anthony last night, and he mentioned that you had a conversation, so that's good. I'd like to make sure, because I think it may have to be broader, because I don't think it's a trade-off of just, it may need to look at the whole list of capital projects across the town, not just ones from the school department to reprioritize
Absolutely.
against
Right.
different
Absolutely,
things there.
for sure. There's got to be,
Kind of thing there. So
absolutely.
I think it'll have to be a broader discussion.
Yeah, so that's why we have representation on that particular board.
Yeah.
So that's fine. All right, thanks for that. All right. Anything else, or are we good?
No, I'm good.
Segueing along that same line for the Budget Subcommittee update, we did have a joint meeting with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen on this past Tuesday, a couple of nights ago. We went over the budget models and thinking about the level staff and level service budget model as it was presented on Tuesday. It's out of balance to an amount of about $580,000, I think was the number. I can't remember. It's over 500. And there was discussion about, what do we need to do to close that gap. Bonnie Fleck is going to go back and look at her revenue projections and get some more information on that. And she thought in a couple of weeks she'd be able to update that to a degree. And then there was discussion on our revolving accounts, primarily the school choice account, and which is fine. That's to be expected. I have a hard copy that I just did today that I wanted to go over tonight. I'll make sure this gets into the packet when we do our minutes and stuff. But kind of the idea that I wanted to present here was sort of a look back over the last several years at the school choice, and I just put circuit breaker because they seem to move hand in hand a little bit. And when we talk about one, we're talking about the other. But we have talked in past years how we've been more reliant during the budget process on the use of school choice funds to support our priorities because the amount of money available in the appropriated budget hasn't really been enough. Primarily because we talk often about how local aid has been level funded, and the update that we got on Tuesday was doesn't sound like it's going to change. Having said that, there is some talk at the State House level about injecting some money into the education budget, which is good news. The maybe not quite so rosy look at that news is that it's not necessarily an across-the-board impact on every district. It depends on how that money is targeted, and a lot of the talk is about supporting underachieving districts, which we clearly are not. But there's also talk about reevaluating the Chapter 70 funding formula and mechanism. Again, on the surface, good news because some of those the assumptions that are in there are penal to a community like Wilton. But again, I wouldn't hold my breath that it's going to be solving the problem. And then there was a tweet that went out earlier this week that tax collections are down over what was projected. So a lot can happen, but I don't think it's going to have a significant impact. So the point being that school choice again is going to be a big part of how we determine how we're going to get in balance with our budget. And what I have here is 3 years of how we started each of the school choice in the SPED circuit breaker account, what we had projected for receipts, what we got for receipts, and then what we had for budgeted expenditures. And that's, when I say budgeted expenditures, that's the amount that we presented and voted on at each of our budget meetings in March for the last 3 years. So back in 2017, we authorized the use of up to $482,000 by the administration in school choice amounts. We expect our receipts ended up being more than that. It was $523,000. As it was, and that the phrase up to $482,000 is important because as it was, the actual expenditures were significantly less. We ended up spending only $266,000, and the balance went up. We started 2017 with under $1 million in the school choice account, and we finished the year with $1.2 million. So even though we had authorized spending up to $482,000, the administration, through good fiscal policy and work, was able to find. We thought they would need to spend up to $482,000 to support the initiatives that we had authorized in the budget. Turns out they didn't need all of that. Different things happened during the year. And in similar story in 2018, we had authorized up to $404,000 spending, which was very close to how much we thought we were going to take in, which was $500,000. As it was, they actually spent $364,000. So a lot of it, of what we authorized, but still a little bit less. And again, we were able to raise the balance in the school choice account up to about $1.3 million. Last year, we authorized the administration to spend up to $550,000, which was a projected deficit situation where we only expected to take in, or expecting to take in this year, because now we're still dealing with, in 2017 and 18, those are actuals, but we're still in 2019. So we're still seeing what's going to actually happen as we move through the school year. But we authorized them to spend more than we thought we were going to take in and put ourselves in a deficit situation. We felt comfortable with that because we had been building the balance up, and we started the year with $1.3 million in there, and we thought we would end up with still $1.2 million in there even after putting ourselves in a deficit situation in terms of spending more than we actually took in a given fiscal year. Unfortunately, as we've talked about during these budget updates and we've talked about with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, we've had a significant increase in our out-of-district tuition for sped services. And we now are projecting that we will spend more than what we had authorized during the budget process last spring. And we're going to spend close to $800,000 out of school choice. Now, that number could again go down, but it's because we could achieve some efficiencies. But it's almost impossible to believe that it will go below $550,000, which is what we had authorized. It's not going to go below $450,000, so we will be in a deficit situation. And instead of projected that we started the year with $1.3 million in the school choice account. We projected that we, even in a deficit situation, we thought we'd be healthy at 1.2, pretty healthy. Now we're thinking it's going to be more like $1 million, which is still good, and it's good that we were able to meet a significant challenge in the increase in sped out of district costs with that reserve amount that we built up over time, even though we continue to be reliant on school choice funding to support the operating budget, but we are certainly not in as good a shape as we had been in the previous 2 years. So I'm not looking to solve any problems tonight. I just wanted to present this. I think we're going to have another joint meeting in about 2 weeks. So, that will certainly be a topic at that next meeting is, where are we in school choice and what do we think we can do in terms of using school choice funds to support the FY 2020 budget. So, at this point, I'd be open to any other comments or thoughts on.
I'm just wondering how sustainable the school choice fund is as our numbers go up, and are we going to have less school choice openings, which means less
with
revenue?
the actual receipts coming in year by year, right? That's a good point. And when I was doing this, I'm looking at we are projecting in 2019 our receipts of $450,000, and we haven't had an update on that. So we will, as a budget subcommittee, ask the administration to let's double check to see where we are in 2019, and then the next question that follows naturally from there is where do we think we're going to be in 2020? We know how many school choice students we're going to graduate out in the senior class. That doesn't mean they'll be the only school choice students who leave the district, because conceivably a family that's choiced in may decide they no longer want to be for whatever number of reasons. We don't typically see a lot of attrition in that regard. We are a district that when we open choice seats, people want to come here. But that is a good question and something that we can look at.
We should have kindergarten numbers for soon.
Yeah, pretty soon. A number of years ago, we had discussions about decreasing, on paper anyway, the number of school choice students that we're taking in, so that it would be a gradual loss of revenue. But we've never been able to actualize that because we've had to rely on those funds to make our budget work. Mike and I sat down one day and we looked at an enrollment perspective over time, and we were actually having the discussion of identifying the ideal grade size, and anywhere from 125, depending on the grade, to 128, and every year doing that check, and when we request school choice seats, we would go on that number. So if a class had 117, for example, we would boost it up with 8 school choice students. Now, there are no guarantees that those seats are going to be filled. Really, it's really dependent on the grade. The more seats we have open in younger grades, the better chance we have of filling those seats. So it would stabilize our enrollment, which we've been trying to do for a number of years. Every now and again, we get surprised and we have a larger class. But you look at our enrollment spread, that doesn't happen that often. And maybe once every 5 years, 5 or 6 years. But we want to make sure that enrollment size for each grade is something that we're staffed for, and 125 to 128, we can handle that. So we're going to look at it a little differently. It may help us sustain a little longer, but it's a catch-22. I would like to see us a little less reliant, but at the same time, we also have to do what we need to do to make it work. And I think we're in that spot right now where we certainly are reliant on those funds to make our budget work, and we have to try to sustain them as long as possible.
I mean, I think it would be a good exercise for us to go through so that when we present our projections to the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, the dollars is one thing, but the headcount, which is driving that, is another thing. And I know that it was eye-opening for them when we showed, okay, here's our out-of-district dollars, right, but here's how it's distributed, right, number of kids and different buckets of how much, the particular student may be requiring, just in a bucket amount, really helped them understand, we're going to have fewer students receiving services, but we have a big increase just because they're different types of services. So I think that, in hearing that, I think that what we will do in getting it ready for that meeting is we will have some data that we will give to them prior for them to digest, and some of it will be along the lines of, here's the dollars, but also here's the, where we think we're going to be and where we think we can go, and that'll help us all understand the sustainability, because we're talking about, we were creeping up to about 1.4. Too much. You could have too much money in there. I mean, it's just not healthy to build it up and too high. But I think we've always been pretty happy when it's been a little over $1 million, maybe that 1 to 1.5 million. And if we realize that we're in a true deficit situation year by year, then, how comfortable can we be? Is it 750 that okay, we can go that low, or is it 550? Or do we just say, look, we're going to go for broke?
Yeah,
and
and
we're broke.
I'm not advocating artificially decreasing our
Right.
school choice
No.
spots. I'm just wondering if
Right.
our class sizes continue to grow, are we going to be able to sustain those?
I mean, the analysis that we looked at, it didn't jump out at us that was the
Right.
case. But it's certainly, worthwhile to be able to model it year by year to make sure that, that continues to be true. And everybody should be on the same page and be able to see it. So we'll
But
definitely get that done.
I wonder too, though, if, Littleton truly is having its own, more and more students from Littleton, and therefore more students are requiring services. If we could find some way, I mean, there might be a possibility that there's something that we could start bringing in-house.
We've done that,
Yeah.
over the years.
But like, now that we have seen some higher enrollments, is it easier to say, okay, yeah, there's a common denominator here, and having that kind of person in-house would be a savings?
Well, we always look at that. We've brought probably five programs back into our system in a matter of under 8 years. We are exploring options. Mike and I had a conversation about the possibility of recruiting students from other districts for our 18 to 22 program at the high school. But in order to do that, we're going to have to change up a few things. When you're doing an age 18 to 22 program, and if you want to make it attractive, you should really have it out of the high school, because it's more of a work connection program. So we would have to sit down, and we're already starting to do that, cost out what it would take to rent some space, and what are the minimum number of students that we need to make this program viable. because our 18 to 22 population fluctuates. And a number of them have graduated in the last couple of years, and we're looking at lower enrollment for FY20. So that's one area that we're looking at, and I know from the conversations that I've had, if we do it right, it would certainly attract a number of districts to send some of their kids to us. So we're always looking for ways to take care of the students that we have and keep them in our community. But there are other areas that even if we were twice the size in terms of student enrollment, we wouldn't have the critical mass to offer some of those programs for some of our students. What we're really trying to do is create a staffing profile that will allow us to keep students in our district that are struggling with social and emotional competency acquisition. A number of our students that go out of district are going into programs, therapeutic, and focusing on SEL. So I think what we've done this year has been a good start, and we've already seen positive results. And I guess the question is, we'll do this for a year and reassess it, and then what's our next step? Because our high school isn't our only population that has a need in that area. It's just a matter of methodically trying to establish the right kind of staff to meet those children's needs.
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts. One, I guess I got to have a little pause when there. There's a lot of sensitivity, I think, around the cost of various services, particularly as we have some small populations that it might be identifiable to individual students or families. I want to make sure we exert extreme caution in what type of data we share relative to that, at what level of granularity. And I want to make sure that that's forefront in our
I appreciate that, and to that point, we had a meeting of the chairs with Bonnie Fleck, Anthony Ansaldi, and Kelly were there, and Kelly and I made that very specific point that there's only a certain level of information that we're going to be able to convey in that regard, and you're going to have to be happy with that.
Because
so that's already been made, and we'll continue.
Because at certain levels,
you're right.
I don't need the insight at too deep of a level on that, and I'd be very concerned if other boards or other members are getting insight that we view is beyond our boundaries of what we should be looking at. I always want to bring that up at the board in public there. A couple of thoughts back on the budget piece here. Do we want to I don't want to call it a policy, but maybe start developing some guidelines in terms of should we be targeting 5% of our budget as school choice whole reserves, types of numbers, so that we can use that as a more concrete number that we're talking about using. Maybe start saying we're at the point, since our school choice number is at approximately 5%, that we will not budget plan more than expected school choice income that year to keep it stable. Just to put some little stakes in the ground in terms of what our philosophy more formally stated is. But I don't want to go as far as a policy about that, but I would think maybe in our budget planning guidance, that's what we start presenting.
It's a good concept. It's certainly something that is done on the town level. There's specific policies regarding how much we're going to contribute to various contingency funds, and they're good policies. My concern is that we make sure we understand their policies and not rules, and certainly not laws.
Yeah, no, that's why I said I wouldn't want to
guidelines
as a policy.
Right.
I'd say is our budget philosophy is this is what we're targeting here, and the subcommittee wouldn't come up with a budget that would break those numbers without us really understanding it. Or if we voted at the hearing to change those numbers, we all have that in mind of what we're consciously doing.
I like the idea in some form, because when I first got involved, our amounts available in these accounts was way lower than this.
Yeah.
And it was an extreme area of concern for the finance committee, and rightfully so. And as a school committee, there was quite a transition in school committee members when I first got elected. We took that to heart, and we moved to, and we agreed, it was more of an agreement, a verbal agreement between the FinCom and the school committee that we would drive those balances up. And I remember talking about at least $750,000 was kind of what we agreed upon. And that was then. And then now we're hearing a different story from this FinCom and saying, well, why do you have so much money in that account? Why don't you, go ahead and spend it? It's like, wait a minute. That's 180 degrees from what I was being told by, not you people because of this transition, and I think you're right. I think if we had it not written down, but agreed upon, and again, understanding, that it's a guideline, but I think that would help us to, when we're in meetings with them, because we can communicate that to them and say, similar to you do, when we don't come in asking for you to stop doing all these deposits. We know they're beneficial to the town, year by year. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then if we track it to our total budget, as our budget changes,
Right.
that number then can adjust, and it's not artificially held at
Right.
a fixed dollar number. Anyway, that was my thoughts.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Matt, you got here late.
No questions.
I wasn't catching.
You're not allowed to talk.
Yeah, he was at the district-wide concert?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting, you can see the progression, they get better.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time when it comes to youth sports, like, you don't have to have your child play year-round soccer. You know how she's gonna get, when she's 12, you know how she's gonna get better? Be 13. All right, Jen, anything else on that?
No.
All right, I think that's good for the budget subcommittee, thank you. Policy subcommittee?
Yep, so we have this, well, there's the second reading of EBC and JICFB, which had no changes last week. Or two weeks ago. So, and there are, I think it was 16 new ones for first reading.
Let's,
Take a motion for that.
yeah, why don't we take a motion on the, or discussion first on the.
You can take the lead on reading the list of ones for the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Well, I'll read the one for the ones we're accepting today. I can do
I
that.
want to do the,
Yeah, any discussion or comments on the motion for second reading on EBC and the other one?
No.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the policies EBC and JICFB as presented.
second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. All right, now we can have discussion on the motion for the first reading for all of these policies.
Jen's been busy.
Any questions or comments? Suggestions, concerns? Pausing a little longer than normal because it's a long list.
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
Definitely gave Daryl a run for his money on this one.
All right, I'm good.
I didn't have any problem.
All right. Then I will entertain a motion for the first reading. You don't have to list them all, as presented in the agenda would be fine.
Oh, come on.
Go for it, Daryl.
Sorry, Daryl.
I make a motion to accept the policies in the packet as presented.
For first reading.
For
For
first reading.
first reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. Any other business? We do not need an executive session. Is it true that March 7th, that's our next meeting? Oh, yeah, we have February break coming up. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Would you like another meeting before that?
No.
No.
Fine. Okay. All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.